Hey, so what a beautiful day we've got here today. It is just so nice to be out in the sunshine. It just feels so good to have that sun on your face. We are being careful as we're out here. We're making sure that we're not around everybody, as I hope that you all are doing as well. So today on this glorious day, actually what I've been thinking about a lot lately is the idea of faith. And although faith is not like a new thing for me to think about, I've been thinking about it a little bit differently because I've been wondering to myself, what is it that we ultimately put our faith in? What are the things that we place our faith in? I know a lot of times we may give lip service to our faith being in Jesus, or our faith being in those truths of Scripture that we read about, but I wonder sometimes if that's the case. And so as I was thinking about faith this week, I was reminded of a story that comes to us from John's Gospel. It's a story of a healing, and in some ways it's a little bit different than some of the other healings that Jesus does, because in other places, when Jesus heals someone, he may say to them, "Your faith has made you well, go in peace." But this time, in this particular story, Jesus doesn't say that. And I think there's a good reason why he doesn't say that to this man that he heals. Let me read this story and see if you can figure out for yourself what I'm talking about. Beginning at verse 2 of chapter 5 of John's Gospel. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep's gate, there was a pool, called in Hebrew Bethesda, which has 5 porticles. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there, he knew that he had been there a long time. And he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. Now that day was a Sabbath. So when the Jews said to the man who had been cured, "It is the Sabbath. It is not lawful for you to carry your mat." But the man answered them and said, "The man who made me well said to me, 'Take up your mat and walk.'" They said to him, "Who is this man who said to you, 'Take up your mat and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had disappeared in the crowd that was there. Later Jesus found the man in the temple and said to him, "See, you have been made well. Do not sin any more, so that nothing worse happens to you." The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had made him well. Therefore the Jews started to persecute Jesus because he was doing such things on the Sabbath. So did you hear it? Did you hear the source of that man's faith? I mean, here Jesus comes up to him and says to him, "Do you want to be made well?" And how does he answer that question? He doesn't answer it by, "Yes, can you do that for me?" His answer is, "Of course I want to be made well, but no one can put me into the pool." You see, for the man, it wasn't anything about Jesus, it was the pool that was going to make him well. His faith was firm, and his faith was solid, and his faith was in a magical pool that would somehow make him well. And as he heard Jesus' question, his response is, "Yes, of course I do, but the thing in which I have faith, I can't get to." And there, all along, standing in front of him, was the true source of what could make him well. You know, I wonder to myself, how often do we put our faith in other things, in objects, in perhaps superstitions? How often do we put our faith in things when we simply want to be made well, and those things really are not the source at all for salvation or health or fullness of life? But you know, there's another little message of faith in this passage as well. And it happens with the Pharisees. Now I know maybe that sounds strange because a lot of times we just see Pharisees as the adversaries of Jesus, and so we easily discount them. But the fact is, these Pharisees had some great faith. They had a firm and great faith that somehow, in their adhering to each and every aspect of the law, they would be made well. They would have salvation. They would reach the wholeness that God wanted them to reach. And so their faith was in the Sabbath. When in reality, the Sabbath was the thing that allowed them to be fully present to the source of their healing and the source of the true thing that they needed to have faith in. You know, sometimes even those religious convictions in which we have faith might let us down. But it is Jesus who is behind all these things, that is there to offer true healing. And for the Pharisees, rather than seeing that, they just want to persecute Jesus because somehow they think that what they already have is going to make them well. So, do we want to be made well? Do we want to have the wholeness of life? Do we want to find that salvation that's offered to us? Well, if so, perhaps the question for us today is, in what have we put our faith? What is the source of our faith? And how can we find Jesus to be that source of faith and not the objects or the practices, but truly and completely the presence of God in our lives through Jesus Christ? Thanks so much.